There are few things more obvious than the fact that Western media represents China as a state that can do no right, most times to a comical extent. Try finding an article from a mainstream Western source that explains a good thing China did without a caveat of some sort. I bet you will struggle. This phenomenon has become so prevalent and evident that it has become a meme in some spaces.
UK media. Here we are at one of China's toxic rivers. If you look at the color of the water, you may see that it looks quite beautiful. But actually, it was dyed to look this way. I just spoke to the woman over there in the background, and she told me that she added 100 liters of dye to the water.
In this video, we will explore the strategies which mainstream media utilizes in order to portray China in such a manner, after which we will try to figure out why this happens. There are particular words used in Western media to tell something is bad without actually having to prove it as a result of the vagueness of the words. The most infamous example of this is with the word draconian. This nebulous word is used to instill fear within the audience in a vague manner without the responsibility of having to explain the reasoning behind it. China did something, good or bad? Add the word draconian as an adjective somewhere, and that's it. Now you have the perfect article. Best thing about this, the nebulous nature of this adjective makes it so it can still be appropriate without any substance behind why that specific word is being used. Just by typing the words draconian and China on Google, you can see dozens of articles which utilize this method. This is essentially just a free China bad card. My favorite example of this was when Western media was attacking China for the draconian zero-COVID policies. They were calling China an evil and totalitarian regime for it, and they were claiming it would cause economic collapse for China. On the 30th of November, this article was published on The Guardian, attacking China about the zero-COVID policies. 4 days later, after China lifted the zero-COVID policy, The Guardian said, "Fears of deadly infection surge as China abandons zero-COVID policy." The hypocrisy is hilarious. They released dozens of articles criticizing a specific policy from China, and after they lifted the policy, they criticized them for that as well. I guess China can do no right in the eyes of Western media. This is perhaps the most obvious way which Western media uses to paint China in a bad light. The most hilarious aspect is, this infamous phrase succeeds a very obviously good thing that China has done. It is genuinely ridiculous how obvious yet common this method is. China's economy looks to be stabilizing, but at what cost? China's wind industrial policy succeeded, but at what cost? China is getting smarter, but at what cost? I think the answer to that question is, at the cost of making the West look bad. Another very common method used by Western journalists, and, in this particular case, also YouTubers, is to say that country A is literally going to collapse any minute without any real reason, just to get more attention to the article or the video. We can see this especially with China, where people use data of Chinese economic growth decreasing as proof for Chinese economic collapse. I mean, this article just hits every single talking point. Economy stuck. Draconian zero-COVID policy. GDP growth decreasing. They just needed a "but at what cost" somewhere to complete the article. I would be so good at these, they should just hire me at this point. Any honest and educated scholar would never make such a claim about China, because it would simply be incorrect. Quite the contrary, in fact. Any actual scholar would, without hesitation, recognize the incredible feats China has achieved. China has seen economic growth and eradication of poverty with a pace unseen anywhere else in the world, even in the West, which explains why they actually say these stuff. It's actually very obvious why Western media lies to the extent that it does when it comes to China. The reason is simply that China does not subscribe to the free market capitalist ideal that the West embraces, and therefore has seen incredible success. China is living proof that a country so backward and underdeveloped can see unparalleled growth to the extent that it rivals the greatest economy the world has ever seen in less than 80 years. And all of that is because it rejects neoliberalism and free market capitalism. When you look at countries of similar background and size to China that have adopted capitalism, you see the difference. People like to say China is actually successful because it adopted capitalism. They cannot find an actual answer to the question, why didn't India succeed then? It is just an obvious attempt at misattributing China's success to capitalism. This is why the success story of China is an existential threat to the West. It disproves the notion that capitalism is the only way to have economic progress, and that socialism simply fails when it comes to practicality. Not only that, however, since the ubiquitous recognition of climate change, Western diplomats have, being funded by rich oligarchs who would take issue with any action taken against climate change, mostly tried to avoid any actual change as much as possible. They just pretend they do the bare minimum to get international approval. They don't even do that most of the time. China, on the other hand, even while being the manufacturing hub of the West, which you would expect would naturally increase emissions while relatively decreasing emissions in the West, has made incredible progress while also being criticized by Western media. When you look into Western media's criticism of anything China related, you start to see a pattern. They wrongly accuse China of doing what they actually have done or are doing. They accuse China of having terrible and unsuccessful COVID policies, while there have been over 1 million deaths in the US because of COVID. They accuse China of having economic stagnation, while most Western European countries are experiencing economic stagnation themselves. That is why they have to manufacture narratives about China failing. China disproves their theory that socialism is about to fail.